Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast, Marathon of Marriage Special Edition series. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today is a phenomenal couple that I've had the pleasure of knowing now for over 11 years. These two individuals here are just a joy to be around, a God-fearing couple, a very loving and giving couple. Will just, give you the shirts off their back. That's just the kind of people that they are. Very compassionate, very, empathetic about the needs of others. But most importantly, we have a married couple here who understands that marriage is a marathon. They understand that no marriage is perfect, but they're committed to their marriage, as they stated in their vows, to do this thing until death do them part, in the good, the bad, the ups, the downs, the highs, and the lows. And they've been so gracious to take some time out of their busy schedule to share a little bit about what their marriage journey has been like. Of course, with the hopes of inspiring, encouraging, and uplifting others who, whether you're currently married, whether you're thinking about getting married, maybe you've been married before and you're not sure if you want to do this again, and you need some insight, some inspiration as to should I give it a second go? Whatever your circumstances are, or if you've just never been married at all and you just want to know, what is this whole thing about marriage? What is it all about? And what are going to be the keys to success for me to experience a successful and long lasting marriage? But of course, most importantly, we are definitely going to highlight the importance of who needs to be the head of that marriage, which of course, we are firm believers that God has to be a part of that process, has to be the lead in that whole situation as it evolves and develops over time. So with that said, it is my privilege and honor to introduce to you not only a wonderful couple, but two individuals that I consider to be family, to consider to be just dear friends. Ladies and gentlemen, let me allow you to be introduced to you, Mr. Vince and Kim Davis. Vince, Kim, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, how you doing?
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we jump off into our special series for this night, talking about marriages and everything, I do for those who may not be familiar with you. I know, Kim, you've been on the show a couple of times. Vince, this is your first time, but I want the audience to get an opportunity to know a little bit about you. So if you would kind of say, who you are, what you do, where you're from, and of course, please share with us how long you have been married.
I'm Vince Davis. I'm from Dallas, Texas. I am my current employment is I'm a mailman. So I've been there 26 years actually. So, and me and Kim, we actually been married almost 22 years at this time.
Awesome. And Kim?
Kim Davis. I'm retired, so I have the freedom to do as I will, but I do a lot. I do quilting and I go to church every week. Like he said, it's almost 22 years we've been married, and I am from Dallas, Texas, born and raised.
All right. Awesome. And just so that I make sure I have the full scope of your marriage dynamic, because I always like to point out if there's anything uniquely special about marriages in your setup. And one quick thing as well, Vince, if you would lean in a little bit. I want to make sure our viewers, for those who tuning in and they're looking at the audio version, we want to make sure that they catch you. They can see both of you. Okay, we're good. So, in your marriage, one of the things that uniquely stands out about your marriage, and I won't put it out there in terms of the exact numbers, there's an age difference. In your marriage, Kim, you are actually the older spouse in the marriage.
Yes.
And what exactly is the age difference in terms of years?
10 years.
10 years difference. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then as far as marriage is, as far as your marriage overall, Kim, for you, this is your second marriage, correct?
Second marriage, yes.
And Vince, is this your first marriage or?
First marriage.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm pointing these things out because they do play a role sometimes, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the dynamics of a marriage when you have an age difference. In this case, a double-digit age difference. Or if you have a situation where one or more of the spouses has been married before, those type of things can play a role and like I said, in the overall dynamics of the marriage, whether it's in some ways it's a good thing, and in some ways it can pose some challenges that you have to deal with. So I wanted to highlight that. And again, we'll touch on that as we move along. But what I want to do at this time is let's kind of jump into our segments. And I want to first start off with, how did the two of you meet? And what was it about each one of you, and each of you get a chance to speak to this? What was it about the other that you felt like, once you had a chance to meet each other, and this was, experience whatever it was that you experienced, that let you know that, yep, this is what I want to do. And I'm gonna start with you, Vince. You met Kim. Tell me how it happened, and what let you know that Kim was the one. This is what I want to do.
So this is my version. Okay. I'm just preparing you. This is my version.
All right.
Okay. I was working at Armenia's grocery store as a butcher at the time. 21 years old, just trying to find my way through in life. And I am at this fish counter. And at the fish counter, I'm just doing my normal duties of the day. And I saw this woman in the produce section. I could see the produce section from where I was standing. And I saw her kind of look back at me. And I saw immediately her interest. And so my mindset is like, she'll be over here. She'll holler at me in a minute. And eventually she did. She made her way to the oranges, and then to the cantaloupes, and then to the potatoes, and then made her way over there to the fish counter where I was serving. Right. So finally, I really noticed something so beautiful about her was her eyes. Her eyes were just breathtaking to me. They just caught me in a trance, and she started talking to me about some certain things about the fish, and which I knew she really didn't want any fish, So I'm like, well, just get to the point. Let me give you my number, or whatever the case may be. But this is going through my mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think she made a comment about, is that what was the comment you made, babe? I think the comment was about, it was about the fish. That's all I know. And then I just said, do you still want some? And then she made this comment, are we still talking about fish, right? And then she was being flirty too. and so at that point, I already knew that it was going to be on from that point on. I was very confident in who I was, even at 21 years old. So she gave me her phone number at that time, and then we just kind of hit it off after that. I called her, and we just hit it off after that.
Yes.
Awesome.
So that's my version.
That's your version.
You know what I mean? We have different vantage points off of that. My kids say something else about it too. They talk about how their mom was pretending like she was picking fruit and stuff like that. So she really wanted to make her way over to the fish counter where I was, which I knew she did. So, but that's my version.
Awesome. Love that. So to that point, so obviously, the connection is made. You're calling, I'm assuming you're dating, things of that nature. When did you know that she was going to be more than just somebody I'm dating, a girlfriend that I want to do life with her? What was that turning point for you that let you know this is what I want to do?
I could tell you that immediately. I remember we was dating for about 5-6 months. And she was going to take a trip to DC from due to her job. So, and she was gone for 2 weeks. Now, we just dating. It's nothing like just solid. So, we just trying to just get to know each other in a sense. So when she left, I noticed I was just thinking about her, even though I was going out, hanging out with friends or clubs or wherever I was going. I was still thinking about her. And so I'm like, why am I missing this woman? And I really don't know her like that. So it was something in me that was already there that I still wanted to see her. And then finally, when she touched back down in Dallas 2 weeks later, she called me just to let me know she had made it. I stopped whatever I was doing and jumped on the first thing smoking over to her house, and I saw her. And I knocked on the door. She answered the door. She was washing her hair. And one thing I noticed is that she grabbed me immediately and we hugged without even talking. We didn't say anything to each other, but we hugged, and she buried her head in my chest, hair wet and everything. I didn't care. So she just buried her head in my chest, and we just hold each other for that moment. And it was just like, I knew she missed me too. So that's when I knew at that point, this was going a little further than what I had expected at first.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah.
So Kim, I'm curious to hear your part of it. If there's any part that didn't get included in the story that you would like to share. You're in the store, you see this brother, the butcher. Kind of tell us what was that meeting, meeting Vince experience like for you? What drew your attention, and ultimately, what made you feel like, over time that I think I might actually want to make this a long-term commitment, especially in respect of marriage, especially considering, as you started off at the top of the show saying, you had already been through marriage that, the first time around. And so I'm curious to hear your perspective on it.
Okay. Represent me right
Well, everything he said was somewhat true about the part of me approaching him at the meat counter. Yeah, but I really was looking at fruit and stuff. We kind of locked eyes, and I said, he's kind of handsome. I said, but he a little young, but I didn't know he was that young. I knew he was younger than I was, but I didn't know he was that young. But everything he said up until the point where we exchanged number was true, but he was checking me out first. I don't care what he said. He was checking me out first. I would say I was checking him out. But anyway, yeah. So I did give him my telephone number. And the beauty of it is I still have that number in a frame after we met. So I have it in our dining room in a frame. And then he had gave it to me one Valentine's Day and told me that was a number he was never going to lose. So I thought that was really nice. And also, I was in denial with him. He right, as far as when I came back from DC from work, I started having feelings for him, but my struggle was his age and the fact that he had never been married. And I was, divorced with 2 children. And so that was a struggle for me. That's probably why it took us a while for us to get married. But it took one of my aunt and a friend. Both of them are deceased now. She said, baby, that man loves you. And that's what matters. He loves your kids. And my friend that's deceased, he made the statement. I said, but he's so young, and I don't want to be the one that he had regrets with, because I've been married before, He said, well, you were married to someone of your age, and that didn't work out. So you ought to give him a chance because he really cared for you and your kids. So I did take that in consideration, but I still struggled with it. But what really got me was the consistency. Mm-hmm. It was consistency. He showed up. He was there for my kids. He bonded. He didn't get to meet them for about 4 months. It was 3 or 4 months before you met them.
Maybe.
Yeah, 3 or 4 months before he met him, because I didn't think, it was going to go anywhere.
Your mom.
And my mom, he met her before she died, So with that being said, the consistency is why I say I can see, me being with him, but it was a struggle for me. It really was.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. And well, first of all, I appreciate you all sharing this. It's always interesting to know how, couples come together and the dynamics of it all. But there's a few takeaways that I have from what you both have said, and actually follow-up questions to that. One of the things that you just mentioned that I think, for lack of a better way of saying it, is sort of a forgotten art, if you will, a forgotten way. You made mention about the kids.
Hmm.
I think a lot of, I'm not going to say it's across the board that this is always happening, but there are a lot of couples that are coming together. Man meets woman. Let's just say woman has kids. And the question that oftentimes gets raised is how soon should that woman introduce this man to those children? And so I like the fact that it wasn't just, coincidental that it was 3-4 months before they had an opportunity to meet. I got the impression from what you said that it was actually intentional,
Yeah.
that I'm not going to just because I met this guy at the store, hey, come over and hang out with my kids, in the next day or two. Kind of speak to that a little bit about why was it important for there to be a bit of a time frame to lapse before you introduced, in this case, introduced Vince to your children. What was your concerns, and why did you think that was critical? Because I think there's going to be some people listening that need to know why this is a big deal.
Okay. First of all, I didn't know if it was going to work. The relationship was going to work, and I didn't want them to. I didn't want him to get attached as well as them if it wasn't going to work. And then I'm still trying to get to know him. I got to know him before I want him to, introduce him to my kids, because my first thing is protection.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to look and see how the interaction is and how my kids respond to him. Because sometimes we tend to ignore the feelings of kids. You could tell if your kids are just, it depends on how you raise them. Let me take that back. If your kids are saying, I don't like him because he's not my dad or anything like that. It wasn't like that with my children. It wasn't like that at all. They was trying to get to know him, and I saw a kindred spirit that he had around them too. And they gravitate to that. I think my son had the biggest struggle. He liked Vince, but he didn't want to, he wanted to be loyal to his dad. I'll put it like that. And my daughter, she's just like a social butterfly, and she have a very discerning spirit at a young age. And she really liked him and took to him as well. But my son liked him too, but he felt like he had to be loyal to his dad. And I never pressured them, and I never pressured him that they needed to get together once we start dating. It was at their time.
Awesome. And so, and how old were the kids at the time that you all first met?
5 and 8.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and again, with them being young like that, I like the fact, Kim, that you pointed out the importance of protecting my kids.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, there are scenarios, where men and women come together, and if you bring that man around your kids too soon, and you don't really know him, you don't know his background, you don't know his way, you may have somebody that appears to be one way, but low key, they may be have inappropriate intentions with your children. And so I appreciate the fact that you made it a point to be protective, just to be on the safe side, to say, hey, I want to get to know you from myself first, to pass that test, if you will, before I begin to introduce you to my children, and especially when they're young like that. And to be quite honest, I've had personal experience with that as well, where I've dated women in my past that had children, and it is really a challenging thing because you spoke about, kids getting attached to you,
Mhm.
as that man, and then even as the man, you getting attached to those kids to the point to where, and my mom and I've had conversations about that in the past. I remember, things like that, like, you kind of step in, and if you're really that kind of guy, and I know Vince is that kind of guy, you kind of will take to these kids like as if they're your kids,
Yeah.
Right.
and you kind of assume roles that really are not your role, especially not at that early stage of the courting and the dating of this woman that you're with. So you playing boyfriend, you playing daddy, you
Yeah.
playing all of that, and then unfortunately, if the relationship doesn't play out, and again, I've been in that situation, the relationship doesn't play out, and now you and this woman are breaking up.
Yeah.
It's already hard that you and the woman are breaking up, but it's even more difficult is when you're looking at these kids, especially if it's a situation where, you possibly have moved in
Mhm.
or things of that nature. They've gotten accustomed to you being like this surrogate dad. And then now all of a sudden we broke up.
Yeah.
Where you going? You leaving? And the looks on those kids' faces, the heartache, the heartbreak that they go through just seeing you leave, especially if you were that good guy, in that situation. It's very disheartening. So again, I'm saying all that to say, to highlight again, Kim, about the importance, and I'm glad you brought that up about making sure that, don't be so quick, ladies, to bring a man around your
Absolutely.
children. Again, doesn't mean that the man is bad, but there's levels to this. There's steps. There's a process to this.
Right.
And you have to be really careful about that because not only, those kids can potentially be harmed or just not only just physically harmed, but they could be emotionally and mentally harmed. It could be confusing if
Yes.
you are rushing the process. And this is why, and we'll repeat this, I'm sure multiple times throughout our broadcast, is that's why God's role in the relationship is so important, because we do fall victim at times in our human flesh, that we meet somebody that we really like and we have fun and being around them and everything. And we kind of get into that mode of playing house, playing husband and wife, and we're not at that point yet. And that's why God has a specific design as to how we are to do things, because when we go outside of that lane, it just creates confusion. It creates complexities that we didn't have to have if we were doing it in the right way that he designed for us to do it. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yes.
Kim, you talked about also, of course, your hesitancy in regards to the age. Was this I guess one thing I'm curious to know, was this, at the time, was this something that you had never ventured off to? I mean, I don't know what your history had been in terms of, age differences. Was this like the biggest age difference that you had ever experienced before, where, where, hey, I'm pursuing a younger guy?
Yeah.
And then for you, Vince, had you ventured on the other extreme in terms of an older woman? Had that been something you had experienced before? Or was that also kind of a new thing to you as well?
No, I experienced older women.
Okay.
And just to piggyback off of that, I don't know. I couldn't. It was hard for me to date women my age, around my age range, because I was looking for a certain maturity level.
Mhm.
I was looking for people who wanted something in life, who had vision,
Mhm.
or who was just not just living for the day all the time, but somebody who wanted to build something and have something. It was hard to find that in my age range. So
Oh,
once I met Kim, she was like the perfect type of woman that I've always like dreamed about.
hmm.
That was my type to me.
Gotcha. And it's interesting that you say that, because that's something that, and I've even shared that with Kim before. You and I are very similar in that regard. I mean, my wife, of course, is younger than me. And that's actually an odd thing for me, because traditionally I was like you. Um, Most of the women that I've dated in my earlier years tended to be older women.
Right.
And I think I even jokingly made a comment to Kim about how I could be out in the club, and sometimes I'm sure where you might see a mother and daughter, hanging out. I'd be more prone to talk to mama than I would the daughter, but it was for the reasons that you spoke about. It was like it was a maturity thing. I struggled a lot of times when I attempted to date women that were either at my age or if they were especially if they were several years younger. And so it was really unusual that I would ultimately end up marrying somebody who was, in this case, is a 6-year difference between me and my wife. And I had never gone that extreme in that direction. Now, I'd gone that extreme in the other direction, but I'd never gone through it in the other way. But it was a maturity thing. That was the big difference. That was a unique situation where I met somebody who was mature for their age. And so that was the only reason why that was able to ultimately even be a possibility for it to work, because otherwise I'm kind of like you. It was just the maturity level just wasn't there for me. So it's just interesting that you brought that up, that was kind of a thing for you.
Yeah.
So
as me, Joe, younger guys have been attracted to me, but I never dated, younger guys. My first husband we was maybe 10 months apart or something like that. I was 10 months older than him or something like that. Older than he was. So, yeah.
Yeah, so when these young brothers was coming up to you, boy, I can still smell a Similac on you, little boy. You're not ready for this. You're not ready for all this, little boy. Go on to your mama. I was just messing with you, but yeah, I love the approach that you all took. It was clear that you were very deliberate in the steps that you took in order to build the relationship. Because we all acknowledge the importance of God being a part of the process here. If you recall, when did you all first start having that kind of conversation where, whether you talk about, do you go to church, do you believe, are you saved? When did that conversation ever come up, and how did that evolve in your relationship? I'm kind of curious.
I think the conversation came up later in the relationship and being transparent, because I wasn't going to church on a regular basis, but it came up when I started my journey, my spiritual journey, and that was when my mother died. And I grew up Baptist, and he grew up Church of Christ. So we had conversations about that, and before we got married, we was attending church together, Church of Christ, because I was trying to follow him. So when we did get married, that's what we became members of Church of Christ. But I had kind of a lot of questions about the Church of Christ, and more so their traditions, and some of the things that was said, it didn't sit well with me, saying that they were the only church, and then my thought was, I know my mother and grandmother was a praying woman, and my grandmother was faithful, and I'm not sure about this, So we continue to find a church that fit us, and we are there now. And then we've been there almost 11 years now, maybe 14. I'm sorry, my numbers are off. 14 years, and I just love it. We both grow spiritually there, and we serve there. And I really like the teachings of the church that we attend to now.
And that's another beautiful thing too that I don't want to, brush over, is the fact that, this kind of goes to the whole concept of the importance of being equally yoked, and serving together in ministry. I mean, anybody who knows you, knows the two of you, know that you both are very active in your church, and if I'm correct, you both are serving as deacons, correct?
Yeah, he's a deacon.
Yes.
Yeah, and so between that, and I know, Kim, you've been heavily involved with children's ministry and events. You've been involved in a number of different other ministries as well. So it's always it's so key to have not only you being equally yoked, but the fact that you both are actively in church, because you're kind of, it allows you to be on the same accord, and those experiences, that community of being around other believers. And in many cases, I'm sure you have other, couples that you're friends with that are also in your church. That whole aspect, that whole circle of community is so critical. I should say a critical piece to one's marriage being long lasting and successful, especially when you have an opportunity to, again, partner up and be alongside of other like minded individuals that are on the same path, going through some of the same challenges and experiences. Because even as believers, we go through stuff.
Yeah.
Our marriages are not flawless and perfect, and we're not flying around with wings in the air and having no problems or anything. We go through the same challenges as those who are not believers.
That's right.
It's just that our approach into
Yes.
how we handle those challenges when they arise is a bit different. But it's the difference that oftentimes makes the difference between whether or not the marriage lasts or whether or not the marriage ends in a divorce.
Yeah.
That doesn't say that Christians don't divorce, because they do.
They do.
But it minimizes, I should say, the likelihood of it happening because of the foundational basis that's been put into place. And so
Exactly.
that is so essential. One other thing I wanted to tap into real quick, going back to the kids.
Mhm.
I'm curious to know, how did, and this, I guess this will be more of a question for you, Kim. How did you go about having the conversation, or introducing the idea of discipline? That oftentimes is a critical thing that comes
Yeah.
about when you
Yeah.
talk about two people coming together to get married. And because in this case with Vince, now you're going to be stepdad,
Mhm.
and every mom, she may love you to pieces, but you the stepdad, and some stepdads have free reign. Others, the mom is a little hesitant about, what do you do when the kids are acting up? Is it all the discipline all falls on mom, or does stepdad have the same level or balance of authority to be able to say and or do whatever deems to be necessary to do? Of course, obviously excluding being abusive or anything like that, but can he execute the rod if it needs to be executed? Can he punish? Can he reprimand? And how does that act? So kind of talk to us about how did you process the whole disciplinary conversation, and how that would be incorporated in your marriage?
Okay. So what we said, and you notice sometimes we have Team Davis.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like us against them. Okay, situation. And I had a conversation with my kids about he has a right to discipline them. I'm okay with that, because again, that's where it comes in, you knowing him, you know, and you have an understanding. He's more lenient than me. I think they would rather him than me. But it was the same conversation I had with them, because their biological dad is remarried. She have a right too if they're misbehaving. But I think the only time he had to discipline her, my daughter, one time, was she got a little bit disrespectful, and it hurt him more than it hurt her. And when he brought it to my attention, I was like, "What's wrong with you?" He said, "I didn't want to do it." I said, "Okay, but she know the consequences of it. She'll be all right. But baby, we got to be on the same accord when it comes to that." And sometimes, Joe, the kids will try to play one against the other. Also, they'll go ask him or ask me, and if I say no, they'll go ask him to get a yes. So we got to be on the same accord with that as well. So we talked about that. I just ended like this: whatever your daddy say.
Mm.
So they just had to go to him in the first place. So it's whatever he said. So to minimize that, the back and forth, and then the respect level. And I think it was easy because they respected him,
Mm-hmm.
and they really wasn't, misbehaving. They really
And
do that.
Yeah. And again, that's a testament to how you were already raising them, but we know that there are certain marriages where,
Yes.
again, a potential, stepdad is coming into the fold of things. And then, like you said, the moment a disciplinary scenario arises,
Mhm.
sometimes depending upon how those kids have been raised, they may say, you ain't my daddy.
Yeah.
You can't do this. Or he may discipline and he say, I'm gonna tell my daddy that you did, and try to play off of that. So I'm glad that yours was a little bit more positive experience, but to those who are tuning in, but that might be in that situation and they're concerned about, should I allow, again, the stepdad, or it could even be a stepmom. Should I allow that step parent to discipline? Like, what are the keys to working that out? And I think you said it best, was there needs to be a conversation. You need to, as a team, you need to understand this is how we're going to approach this. And I like the fact that you didn't restrict Vince in terms of making him feel like he was defenseless. That but we know that your kids didn't do this, but if your kids were disrespectful, if they were out of hand, he didn't feel like, if I say something, if I do something, I got to deal with you. You're going to be mad at me for doing what I should have the authority to do, as the quote unquote, as the parent in this case. Even if it's step, you're still the parent, you're still, overseeing in that role. But we know that doesn't always happen. And unfortunately, that's one of the scenarios that can lead to marriages falling apart, because, that step parent in that scenario is left defenseless. In some cases, that step parent may feel like in times of trouble, it's the kids and the other spouse against that step parent. So you feeling like you out on the island by yourself. You can't do nothing. You got to accept whatever, because I'm going to hear it from my spouse and I'm going to hear it from the kids, and they just think that they can just kind of walk over me and do whatever. So I'm glad that you all made it a point to emphasize that importance of, again, formulating that alliance,
This
with.
too. Uh, if I may, let me add this too. And I know we'll get into it in another segment of this. But I have a bonus daughter, and it was during that 5 year dating. And we'll talk about that a little bit. And I brought it up because of the discipline part.
Mm.
And she's younger than my kids, and I never had to discipline her. And I think she saw the firmness that I was, and I always talked to her to, understand what was going on. I never had to discipline her. And once we was in a store, and this kid was cutting up, and I think she was about 5 or 6. Deanna, you was at work, and she was at the store with me, and I think she was about 5 or 6. And she looked at the kid like the kid was just strange, And then she looked up at me. She called me Mimi. She said, Mimi, I know that wouldn't happen with you. I said, we had that understanding.
Right.
I never had to discipline her. I never did. Mm-mm.
Awesome. So just to be clear, you Kim, you had 2 kids, and then Vince, you had
A
one,
daughter.
a daughter. And how old was your daughter at the time of you and Kim coming together?
When we met, he didn't have her. That's why I said we talk about
Gotcha. All right. So this has been awesome. I love this. And again, I appreciate your transparency and all that you're sharing here. So, with that said, we know that in this marathon of marriage, and we call it, and the title is that way intentionally, it's a marathon. And in that marathon, just as with life in general, there are going to be some moments in time where we face some challenges and adversities. Some are easy to navigate through, but then every now and then there are going to be some that hit a little bit heavy, and that can happen even in the confines of a marriage. And so, with that said, if you would tell us about a time when you, as a married couple, found yourself facing a challenging situation that you didn't know how you were going to get through this situation. You didn't know how you were going to overcome it. It was a little bit more than the normal day-to-day type of stuff that husbands and wives go through or deal with. So if you would kind of walk us through what that experience was like for you, and what was ultimately the turning point that allowed you to be able to kind of have a breakthrough, kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel in that particular situation.
You want to go?
You're coming.
Okay. So, it was it was broken trust with
Okay.
me. Um, I feel like I'm a loyal person, committed and whatever, but during the course, the beginning, it was really the beginning. And a lot of people, during our married couples seminars and stuff at church, I tell a lot of people, um, the married couple ministry saved our marriage. When we first came to the church, because we was on the edge of separating. So it was broken trust there. My bonus baby was already here, but we were dating and we kind of had a break. That's where, you know, um, she came in when we was getting back together, and what I appreciate the transparency, he told me about her, so my thought was, okay, you love me and my kids. Why would I separate her? You know,
Mm.
so if we're going to do this, we're going to be a family. And, it was hard for me to come, um, the trust that was broken. But one thing I can honestly say, when he said he would never hurt me again, I believed him. And that was how many years ago?
Almost 15.
15 years ago. He
Mm.
said, I would never hurt you. I've heard it before in my first marriage, but I didn't believe it. But I heard it this time. And not only did I believe it, when I made the statement about consistency,
Mm-hmm.
he showed it. And it was something that I had to deal with. He didn't try to make it like, how some couples, the guy will say, I'm doing everything to gain your trust. He just did it, if you know what I mean. And it wasn't nothing like he tried to do something extra to gain that trust. And I had to learn to deal with my feelings. Even a sense of insecurity at the time, because a lot of women don't want to talk about that. But I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
be transparent. A little bit of insecurity, he gave me my space. But what I really appreciated about it, he never made me feel insecure. I wondered where he was. And I told him, I'm not going through no wireless. I'm not checking no cell phones. I'm not doing it, because what would happen is going to happen. So I didn't have to go through that, after the betrayal, put it like that.
Mm.
And he meant what he said, and here we are today.
Wow. Um, Again, first off, appreciate your transparency and sharing that. And it's really that this particular story is um it's very important because we
Mm-hmm.
all know that anytime there's a conversation of quote unquote betrayal within the confines of a marriage, that's usually a very easy reason for that woman or for that man, depending upon the situation, to just say, I'm done with you, I'm over it. And this is also where having the godly presence in the marriage is so important, because if God is not in your marriage, I know you may mention about the marriage ministry, but the
Yeah.
marriage ministry is a part of God's ministry, and we know that you are connected with that because of your relationships with God. And I want our audience to understand this, is that again, even Christian couples have shortfalls. We stumble. We say and or do things that we know might have not been the best moves, may have not been the best decisions. But at the same time, even in those moments, it shouldn't automatically mean that you just call it quits. And so I love the fact, and you didn't say the word, but what you were expressing here is that you allowed yourself to be open to forgiveness.
Yes.
Um, and I'm a firm believer that forgiveness is just not only in life, but definitely in your marriages. Forgiveness is so, so important. Whether you're talking about betrayal, whether you're talking about, like I said, words that were said that shouldn't have been said, actions that were taken that shouldn't have been taken. I mean, it doesn't really matter. You have to, if you want your marriage to last, one of the things you better get good at is forgiving.
Yeah.
Because if you sit around holding grudges, you sit around looking for ways to be vindictive, I'm gonna get you back, kind of playing that tit for tat type of
Yeah.
stuff with one another. It not only sets you up for that marriage to crumble and fall to pieces, but even if you decide to stay together, if that's your mindset, then you end up just being in a toxic marriage. So on paper you're still together, but mentally, emotionally, you've been apart for an extended period of time. And so I appreciate, and it shows your level of spiritual maturity to even be able to grant that, because there's a lot of women, and even a lot of men, if it had happened to them, that they'd be like, no, that's my out. And you even have some of us who, with our Bibles, we know, well, God says that if it's this,
Yeah.
that's my way out. And yeah, we're not denying that the Bible doesn't speak to that, but even with it speaking to that, God still would prefer. His preference would be that you lean into Him and say, look, this is our situation, this is our challenge, this is what happened. Can you be here for us to help us work through whatever this is? And God, being who He is, being all powerful, all knowing, all loving, even in a moment of betrayal, He can help you overcome that. And you all are a testimony to what that looks like. Just the difference in what your lives would have been had you chose to just give up and walk away.
Yeah.
Makes all the difference in the world. So that's why, for my audience who may be questioning this, you gotta have God at the forefront of that marriage. He has to be connected with it, because when you have those challenging moments, those moments that are in many ways feel insurmountable, whatever they may be, if God isn't in it and you're relying upon your own human capabilities, your own human strength to handle it, you just can't do it. There's a reason why we're, when we hear the term, God never puts more on you than what you can bear. It's not that we never experience more than what we can bear. It's, are we trying to take on more than what we can bear on our own strength? No, you won't survive that. But with God, there's nothing that can happen in your marriage. There's nothing that can happen in your life that is so, devastating, so traumatizing that you can't get through it if you have Him in your corner. If He's on your team, we talk about Team Davis. Team Davis is headed up by God at the top. Team Roberts is headed up by God. I promise you, we would not be together if we didn't have our relationship with God. There's no way we wouldn't survive it. Because we're imperfect, messy, raggedy folks who get together and say we love each other and want to spend the rest of our lives with each other. But we bring into that marriage a bunch of baggage. We bring into that marriage a bunch of unresolved hurts and pains and all kind of things that are going on. And we're trying to somehow mesh it together and make it work. And so, again, that's why I appreciate, again, your honesty and transparency in that, because that's one of the key reasons why marriages are falling apart. We don't, not just because of the act itself, but our unwillingness to forgive.
Yeah.
But yet, when we fall short, whatever way we fall short, we want to be forgiven, whether it be by the person directly that we have hurt in some way, or more importantly, we want God to forgive. And He definitely speaks about that as well. You can't be asking me to forgive your transgressions and your shortcomings, but then when it's your time to offer that extend that forgiveness to somebody else, you act like you can't do it. You can't have it both ways, where it's okay for you when you mess up, because trust, you gonna mess up. You may not mess up the same way I mess up. I may not mess up the same way you mess up, but trust, you gonna mess up. You gonna do or say something that's out of pocket, out of order, and you're gonna want that forgiveness. You're gonna want that grace. You're gonna want that same mercy. So appreciate you sharing that.
So I do hope it helps someone.
Absolutely. So Kim and Vince, I'm curious to know, we know that in marriages, there are going to be those moments in time. It could be something as basic as what we're going to have for dinner, to something, more involved, like a major financial decision or what have you. I'm curious to know, when the two of you find yourself at an impasse, on a particular issue, no matter what the issue is or whatever. Vince, you on this side of the table with it. You believe that what you thinking about it is the right way, and this is how it should be. Kim is on the opposite end, and she's holding firm. This is where I think it should be. But it's a decision that needs to be made. But the two of you are not currently seeing eye to eye on it. What is your process? What has proven to work best for you when you find yourself at that standoff? In order to be able to overcome those moments of impasse, what has worked for you in your marriage to help you properly deal with that in a healthy way, where it's not treating one side unfairly to the other or vice versa? How do you guys work through that?
A lot of times we agree to disagree. It's just as simple as that. Or if we're in a situation where there's a block like that, we will table it. Because sometimes when we feel strongly about something and anxiety might be a little high or our voices begin to raise a little bit, we might table it, because when you're talking at each other and you're not talking like to each other, there's the communication is distorted. We can't hear one another, and there's no effective communication taking place. So a lot of times that I will ask, I say, hey, we need a timeout. Hey, we need to just table it right now. Let us cool our heads. Let us think, come to ourselves, just have this spiritual connection with God to give us the words and make sure that we don't cross any boundaries when we're going through these blockages, because sometimes ego can get in the way, pride can get in the way. So we try to remove those things out of the equation, and when we do that, a lot of times we communicate effectively, and we be more successful than than fail at the attempt. But I like to say this, like even our arguments and stuff, and we feel strongly about this, I think 99% of arguments are fueled by unresolved issues. So at the time, we just handle things little bite-sized, one by one, whatever issue that we have, we just try to handle it right there, whatever's on our mind. If it's something that we have to make a decision together, then that's one of those things that when we come together, we come together. The approach is different. Our approach is very it's pretty smooth, because we know that if we approach, I don't like aggressiveness. Okay, so, and my wife can be aggressive sometimes, but I will let her know, hey, slow down, son. You know what I mean? And so, and then she don't like my sarcasm. So she will get agitated by my sarcasm, and I'm only sarcastic when I'm agitated by something. So we bring it to attention. This is what I mean by these little battles in this war that we are in. It's little battles that really work in our relationship. And once we come to some kind of block, we just pretty much table it, Joe. We will table it, and then we'll think about it, think about what we said, kind of process. We have these intrusive thoughts, or sometimes, I know I do, and we'll table it, and then we'll come back when everybody's calm and it seems like we can think better, our heads are clearer, and we can make a better decision on going forward on whatever we did.
I love that. I think the tabling it is very good, like you said, to just kind of, because we all know that sometimes you kind of going back and forth, and then the voice is raised, the chest is puffing up, and we're prone to just say something that we ain't mean to say, but I was in my moment, and while I may love you to death, I'm not really liking you right now, and I want you to know what I think about that.
Right.
So I love the tabling piece that you brought up, and I love the fact that you talked about sometimes it's you may mention about sometimes the biggest issues that are involved is like something that's unresolved from totally unrelated to the situation. So the need sometimes to just take this big thing and let's just break it down into little bite-sized pieces. I mean, I think those are two really key ways of overcoming moments of impasse. And we're not saying that these are the only ways to do it, but I love your approach. I think it's very effective, and it allows for a smoother opportunity, as you stated, for the communications to be there, for cooler heads to prevail, and things of that nature. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kim.
One of the other things that he mentioned about bringing up unresolved issue, we made a pact with one another that if you don't bring it up at that time, then you need to let it go. Because if we come to another disagreement and you trying to add that on it, that just prolongs the current disagreement.
Fuels it.
Yeah, and it fuels it, and it kind of blows up. So we made a pact with one another that you don't bring up anything if it's not about the current situation. So if you didn't bring it up at the time or at the moment that it happened, then you need to leave it there. And so that have helped us a lot.
Yes.
The arguments are real minimal because you can't bring up nothing.
And that's a big thing, because I mean, we and I've been accused of that. Are you trying to throw this in? It's like you trying to, and I already know, because I'm kind of like how Vince is. I think our dynamic is similar to my own in my own marriage. My wife is more likely to be the aggressor. And in my frustration, I'm gonna be sarcastic. I'm gonna say something slick, and because I know it ain't gonna do nothing but tick her off even further. But I'm in that moment, I don't care, because you're a little aggressive with me. So to keep me from saying something in aggression in return, because I think men like myself and Vince, we know that if we were to give you that same energy back, we're probably gonna say something that we ain't gonna be able to take. We ain't gonna be able to take that back. And so to avoid doing those things, our alternative is to just be sarcastic, to be basically to be a smart ass in that moment, and like, oh, you a smart, you think you funny.
Oh yeah.
Call it what you want. You think you hard, so again, we do these dynamics, we do this back and forth as husband and wife. It happens, but as you said, ultimately, we have to understand, who we are, how we're wired, how we think, and know where our triggers are, and make sure that we are mindful of that as we're entering into those conversations. Because again, husbands and wives are not going to always see eye to eye. Husbands and wives are not going to always, it's not going to always be this friendly, flowing conversation where we always harmoniously agree with one another. We're gonna get on each other's nerves, and there are going to be times where I'm going to think that what you're saying is totally irrational, totally illogical, all of that. And you're going to think the same about me, but at some point we have to be able to, like you said, find that middle ground to be able to accomplish the mission at hand. So if there's a major decision in particular that has to be made, well, we both have to be on the same page with this, because sometimes we have that, our mindsets being in the right place allows us that opportunity to do so. And then of course, there's obviously going to be an element of compromise. So as a man of the house, while I am, that's my godly role as man of the house, I can't use that in an abusive way and kind of take the role of, well, what I say goes because I'm the man of the house,
right.
But at the same time, there are going to be some moments where, in that same role as man of the house, I need my wife that even if she's not ultimately feeling completely what I'm saying, you kind of have to sometimes default. Give me the benefit of the doubt and say, I'm a roll with you. I don't love the idea, but as the head of the family, I'm a roll with that. And as men, we have to, if I know my wife is more knowledgeable or more sound in a particular subject matter, I might be feeling some kind of way, but I have to be honest with myself and say, well, she is better with the money. She is better when it comes to this.
Yeah.
I don't want my opinions or my thoughts to be dismissed, but ultimately I know who's the one that's going to probably more likely be correct in a particular situation. So there's a give and take in that. There's a compromise in that. And so again, for my listeners, don't be resistant to compromise, or don't take these stands where it always has to be one person's way and never the other person's way, where you're guilting somebody into decisions or forcing somebody into accepting something because you're trying to just dominate and always have things to be your way, because that's just another recipe for marriages to crumble and to fall. There have been marriages that have failed just because of that kind of stuff going on. So appreciate you sharing that. So with that said,
Excuse me.
for both you, Kim and Vince, if you would, there might be somebody that's listening to our broadcast that they are at a point in time, kind of similar to what you talked about earlier, that you were at a point, where you were talking about giving up, and that marriage ministry helped. But there might be somebody that's listening to this episode that, for whatever reason, they're at that point to where they're ready to say, you know what, this marriage thing that I'm in, I'm ready to call it quits. I'm over it, whatever the circumstances are. Or there may be somebody who's been down that road before. They've been married, it didn't work out, and now they're not sure that they want to even go down that path again. They're meeting some nice. They may even be meeting some nice people, but they're potentially sabotaging, those relationships from even developing into a marriage situation because they're so fearful of having a reoccurrence of what happened the first time around.
Right.
So if you had some words of encouragement, some words of advice to offer that couple that's either thinking about throwing in the towel, or maybe that person who's not willing to possibly even give it a second chance. Maybe they found somebody that they really like, but they're fearful about the possibility of giving it that second chance with this new person, in fear that they're going to have a repeat of the situation. What would your words of encouragement be for that, those situations?
I would say that first of all, it starts with self. You have to look at yourself and do some self-checking on a consistent basis to make sure you are right. Each couple has to do that. The man, the female, they have to kind of talk to themselves to make sure they are right in their hearts and they gave it their all. And they have to be sure that they, gave it their all 100% in that relationship. And I would say, outweigh the goods and bads of the relationship. If you have more goods than bads, then I would say that's something that y'all could work on. But unfortunately, if you have more bads than goods, I would say that it's something that y'all more so have to come together and talk on and try to discuss it. And like I said, try, because it's going to start with someone in the couple being quiet. I will say that, don't, set boundaries. Okay. And let each one of them have the floor, because I'll do that with Kim. I would tell if she has something she has to get off her chest that she feels like that's to the point where it could possibly be a strain in our marriage. And if something that she needs to say and get off her chest, I will be totally quiet and be receptive of whatever she has to say, and just be quiet and let her get it out so I can hear her. And then in turn, she will let me have the floor if I had anything I need to address. And so she could hear me. The problem with us couples is that we don't hear each other enough. We keep trying to, over talk and make our point and talk, instead of, this say, for instance, that me and her were having a conversation and she pick up on a key word that I said, she will go off on that and like rebuttal real quick, instead of just letting me continue and finish out everything I have to say. So I would say to couples, first of all, pray about it. Go into your own closet, your own time, your own space, and pray about it and ask God to intervene and penetrate your heart with something that you ain't never felt before. And ask the other person to do the same as well. Pray for yourselves and make sure you are right first before y'all come together and try to make it right with each other, because it's all about investing in one another instead of investing in houses or cars or other material things of that nature. So I just say that just try your best to invest in each other. That's just my advice.
And to add on what he was saying, it was something you said earlier, Joe, about having God in the middle of it. That's a key. Just being transparent, and by all means, no shade toward my ex-husband, because we're actually friends and friends with my husband, we didn't go to church. You know what I mean? And so I didn't have that to bounce off of. You know, no one to in my ear or whatever to see me through it. And one of the things that I love when my husband says, I think I used the D word one time, and if you notice, I said D. I didn't say the word. I said it one time because we was in a heated argument, and I was like, well, you know, we can do this. We could get the D, you know, whatever. And he just stepped to me, and he was very firm and assertive. That is not an option for me. When I decided to marry you, I'm not getting married anymore. And please do not say that word to me anymore. That was about
Wow.
yeah, a while ago. So I've never said that word again. And what I love about him is he said, I already knew marriage was going to be hard. He said, it's like me going to work, babe. I clock in every day to put in work for this marriage. And Joe, that got me.
Mm.
And I can honestly say, we're not a perfect couple. We have our ups and downs. We have our situation. But what I can say is that we work through it together. He lost a parent. I lost a parent. He lost a sibling. I've lost a sibling. But we've been there for each other. So we've been through, financial strains and everything. So it's what you want for each other. And if I could say this to any of the couples out there, a marriage is 50-50. Only divorce. Divorce is 50-50. Marriage is maybe one day 70-30. You might have 30 and I might have 70. And one day he might have 90 and all I got is 10%. But it's about you coming together. And you have to learn to communicate with one another and hear each other out. Because it could be something underlining that you're missing. Okay, just being transparent. Baby, if you don't mind, my husband was abused by his stepdad coming up. He and his mom, they was abused. And in the beginning, he had anger issues and I didn't understand why. But later he revealed that to me. And that was a concern, because I had kids. Well, what if he was abusive like his stepdad?
Mm.
Never was. And he got the therapy he needed. He was diagnosed with extreme PTSD because of his abuse. So you have to be accountable. It's not your fault what happened to you when you were younger, but it is your responsibility as an adult to take care of it.
Yes.
So you won't be carrying it off with others.
Absolutely. And that kind of goes back to what Vince spoke about earlier about, the big causes of those impasse moments is a lot of the unresolved stuff that's going on. Why is such and such so angry? Why are they so emotional? Why are they this? Why are they that? Is it the actual argument itself, or is it something deeper than that? Yeah. And so with that said, when you talked about the therapy and you talked about the counseling, and this is something that's come up a lot of times that, again, marriages have struggled because they don't seek that. Not only during the marriage when they're running across some rough patches, but even before that, premarital counseling is really critical. And if you have a good premarital counseling where the person that's leading that is not afraid to ask those tough questions, the things that you don't really want to talk about, especially when you're all in the lovey-dovey moment and you just wanting to see the best of that person. When you start getting into the meat and potatoes of that real difficult stuff that you probably want to know before you say I do.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that you won't say I do, but at least you'll know what you're up against and you can begin to properly assess and make, take the steps necessary to make sure that those, as you stated, those unresolved issues or those active issues that could potentially be damaging to a marriage, that you got a plan in place to properly, address them so that
Yeah.
it doesn't become a hindrance to the marriage. But when we go into that marriage and we act like, I ain't got no issues, I ain't got no, struggles, no problems, and we try to ignore that, hoping that somehow marriage will make them go away.
Yeah.
Then the moment an argument or disagreement arises, then all of a sudden it's coming out, and then you're like, where's this coming from? This wasn't who I met. Where's this?
Mhm.
And again, marriages are failing because there was no transparency up front. That
That
there
part.
was no accountability up front.
Yes. Yeah.
That doesn't make you a bad person because you went through something like you said, Kim. It wasn't his fault that
Yeah.
that he went through abuse. You went through it. You experienced it. It's not unreasonable for you to have some long lasting impacts. I've done numerous episodes since I've been on this podcast where people have
Yeah.
talked about
You
stuff that's
have.
happening in their 40s and 50s and even 60s that is triggered from something that happened in their teens, or that they never had a chance to resolve, but nevertheless is having an impact in a tremendous way. And so, I'm a big proponent of therapy. I'm a big, whether it's specific to the marriage or whether it's just your individual. I wasn't always like that, I'll admit, but once I got over myself and put my pride to the side
Exactly.
and embarked upon that, lots of value in that. So definitely married couples, if you need it, you need that marital, the premarital counseling, but then even in the midst of the marriage, if you find yourself at an impasse and it's
Yeah.
bigger than you, then assuming, of course, you got God at the head of that marriage, then I'm sure your respective church probably has, some type of counseling service that you can tap into, or they can refer you to someone
Yeah.
that is going to give you some counseling, but that is godly based in terms of its foundation, but nevertheless give you the counseling that you need to be able to sort through things and work through whatever challenges that you're up against. So don't be against that. Don't feel embarrassed. Every marriage goes through. So I don't care. I don't care what marriage it is. I don't care how long they've been married. Don't let anybody fool you into thinking
Right.
that they got this picture perfect,
Mhm.
wonderful, beautiful marriage that never has any issues or problems. There's men and women right now that are envious of somebody that's in a marriage, thinking, oh, she thinks, gee, look at her, she got the life, she got a beautiful car, a beautiful house, fancy clothes, and all that. You see all of this, whether it's in person or on social media. You have no idea that every day that she goes home, she getting beat on, or
Yeah.
every day that she's going on, she's suicidal, or
Mhm.
or he every time he goes home, he dreads going. He works so much because his home is like a prison to
Yeah.
him, mentally and emotionally. You just never know. But every day when you see him, smile on their face, always good spirits, good attitude. But we're wearing that mask, and sometimes
Yeah.
we do it to kind of put on the facade in front of others, but behind the scenes, we're hurting, we're
Yeah.
going through, we're dealing with some stuff. So,
Right.
understand if that's what you're dealing with, that's fine, but don't let it fester inside of you, because it's not only going to be bad for you, but then it potentially is bad for, in this case, in our conversation of marriage, it could be bad towards your spouse, it could be bad towards the kids or anybody like that that's immediately in that space that you're in. So, definitely,
So what you
yes,
said
go ahead.
also about premarital counseling, we had that too, and we found out some things about ourselves, and he found out some things that I didn't like, and same with him, and that helped us as well. We did have premarital counseling.
Yes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and we did as well.
Hmm.
And like I said, you get asked the tough questions.
Yes.
I'm like, oh,
Yes.
what would you do in this situation? How would you respond? Oh no, it makes you look at that person a little bit different. Again, not to call it off or anything, but again, it's an awareness. The more aware you are of one another, and as well as the more aware you are of self, it makes all the difference in the world. And again, going back to God being that third part of your union, it's not just husband and wife, it's God at the head, and you as husband and wife connected to him, that makes this thing work, that makes it survive the marathon.
Yeah.
You're gonna cramp up, you might fall down a couple of
Yeah.
times, you're gonna have that, but you'll always get back up. You'll always be able to, you'll be in the best position possible, I should say, to be able to finish the race. And the
And,
finishing of that race of marriage is, as we say in our vows,
and
till
another
death do your
thing
part. So
I
go ahead.
wanted to add, I'm sorry, another thing I wanted to add was something my husband said earlier about checking yourself. You know, in marriages sometime, and you had touched a little bit on it, we quick to point our fingers at the other person about their fault. That could be another issue. You know, when you be the best version of yourself and take accountability for the things that you say and do, that helps out as well. And like, you know, you mentioned and my husband mentioned that your wife and I are both aggressive. I had to learn to backpedal. And it's still a process for me because I've just been like that all my life. But that doesn't mean I can't change. And I am changing that. So I'm not as aggressive as I used to be with my approach, you know. So it's a matter of me reflecting on some of my actions and the things that I do because he can't fix me.
Right.
I can fix me. And that's my responsibility. It's not his. And it's vice versa. So I think if we look at that as well, ourselves, take accountability, and like you said earlier, maybe counseling. Because some things have happened that we haven't gotten over that might help us press forward and not be so stagnant.
And Joe, can I say this to piggyback off my wife? I hope this will help someone who's dealing with a situation where they about to make a decision on quitting. A lot of times it's your expectations. A lot of these marriages, people go in and expect them to just work on their own. And I had certain expectations of my marriage when I first went in. But at one point when my wife mentioned about the betrayal part, and I can be honest and transparent, there is a time where you can lose focus as a person. It could be a man or a woman, lose focus on what's reality and what's not. And so the thing about it is maintaining that focus as much as you can, or if you see you veering off the focus of your marriage, then you can have to talk to somebody or have a friend that can hold you accountable. It's good to have friends, people at your church, or it don't necessarily have to be a church. It could be just a close friend. Hey, man, I'm thinking about doing this. What am I to do? What do you think about it? So, and somebody that could be honest with you, have that accountability partner. So you'd be surprised how much those accountability partners help you in your current marriage, if your marriage is rocky or if it's you thinking about calling it quits. But it's those two things that are major. It's the expectations and maintaining your focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you pointed out about the expectations, because so oftentimes we go into marriages or even in the courting stage, like I want a guy to be this, I want a girl to be this. And you're like, okay, you got all this laundry list of things that you want them to be, but you know, when we put your list up, does it align with what you're asking for? Are you prepared to, you know, are you even ready to receive that? If you had it perfectly the way you say, are you even at the maturity level of being able to receive it? Like to what Vince said, do you have a standard of yourself? Do you have an accountability of yourself that would align with that? I mean, does it match up? And I know in your story earlier, you talked about the betrayal. The other thing too, that I think that can be a marriage killer, you know, speaking about betrayal, I think the people need to understand betrayal is not always about something physical that took place, you know, where there was somebody else. Nope. There is mental, there is emotional betrayal. Yes. You have no idea how you can isolate your spouse just not by, you know, being supportive of them, not being, you know, not being there for them. You can actually, and I'm not saying that stepping outside of a marriage or anything like that is a justification for such things going on, but sometimes you can create a dynamic to where, as we talk about, you can let the enemy creep into your marriage because of things that you are doing or not doing in the confines of your marriage that you should be doing or shouldn't be doing. You open that door wide open. You let him in.
Right.
He didn't even have to infiltrate. You opened the door for it because you weren't being that team with one another. You weren't in this thing together. You were doing your own selfish, motives, missions. You're supposed to be husband and wife. The two are supposed to be becoming one, and you're playing a solo act within the confine of a marriage. You
That's
can't do that.
no.
That's always, boggled me and even frustrated me when we've had friends of ours who, didn't make it in their marriages. And again, not anything against them, but one of the common things that you see a lot of times is, you got husband and wives are married, but they living like roommates. They
Yeah.
living like, so, you hear the things like my money, your money,
Yeah.
my this and your that, my kids and your kids. Why'd you get together for? If you're going, I thought the whole thing was supposed to be you all coming together, but you still acting like you're solo acts, but you want the coming together benefits, but you want to function solo. You don't want to be held accountable. You can't tell me what to do. I don't want to have to abide by any standard of excellence or we're talking about the reasonable expectation. We're not talking about the unrealistic, just the basic reasonable stuff. You don't even want to adhere to that. You want to be able to come and go as you please, do what you want to. I can't say nothing to you. I can't ask you about what you asking. Why you all in my business?
I don't understand that.
All of that kind of stuff. I mean, again, I'm not trying to micromanage my spouse, but at the same time, there's a certain level of accountability. There's a certain level of respect. There's a certain level of things that there shouldn't be an issue about me asking about this, or you, in some cases, I shouldn't even have to ask you. You should be voluntarily making that information available or making that access available to me. So I want people to kind of keep that in mind too, that sometimes we create, those situations in our marriages just because we're not upholding our end of it. We're not doing this thing as a team effort. We're kind of like on our own solo missions in the marriage, only looking to see what we can get out of it and not taking into consideration that you have a spouse that, you're supposed to be joined up with it. You all are supposed, and Kim, you and I have even talked about this even in our work experiences together. One of the things that I've commonly told my teams, and I know you've shared the similar things in your past in leadership, is that there is no scenario where I win and you lose. How do I, as a husband, win and my wife loses and my child loses?
That makes no sense.
How does that work? I'm getting I'm getting all, racking up all the accolades, all the accomplishments, all the benefits, and y'all struggling, and I'm winning. How's that happen? How do I eat and have a full belly and you starving? How does that work? How I got money in my pocket and you broke? How does that work? Just because I make more money, I make more money than my wife. But as far as the money goes, it's our money.
It's our money.
It doesn't matter that on paper, my dollar amount may be a little bit higher. Well, as I'm concerned, it's our money. And if need be, it's all your money. If that needs to happen, even if I got a $1.50 in my pocket and you got the rest, I mean, I'm not going to let you be without. You know what I'm saying? So it's the whole concept. It's the sacrifice. It's the consistency. I think that's probably been the biggest key word that you spoke of, Kim, and Vince, throughout, is the consistency.
Yeah.
Consistency is huge, especially if it's positive consistency. The consistency is huge for the survival of a marriage. I know what I'm getting from you, even in your lowest moments.
Yes.
Exactly.
Even when you at your rock bottom lowest moments, even when you fall off, one thing I know about you, you messed up and I'm mad, but I know what I know about you. So it makes it easy for me to forgive. It makes it easy for me to still hang in with you because I know who you are at the core. And when you do that with your spouse, you're basically operating the same way God operates with us.
Exactly.
He loves us unconditionally in spite of.
Yes.
I already knew you was going to mess. I know you a mess. But guess what? I'm consistent with you. I still love you anyway. Get on up. Let me dust you off. I'm still here.
Yeah.
You need, that was a knucklehead move, but guess what? I still love you.
Yeah.
That was a dumb thing that you did, but guess what? I've never wavered. I've never changed. That consistency is still there in spite of. And so marriages have to take on that same type of mantra. Like, we both gonna fall short in some way or another, but the consistency has to be that we're gonna still hang in there regardless. We're gonna fight this thing out regardless. As Vince said to you, divorce is non-negotiable. That's not even an option.
Yeah.
We're not even going to talk about it's not a part. We're consistent in that not being part of our solution packet that we have to choose from. No, we need to talk about it. We need to table it for a moment. We need to break it down into smaller pieces. But we gonna work through this. We ain't going nowhere. I ain't going nowhere. You ain't going nowhere.
And I think if some people go in with the notion of the D word, if this don't work out, I know what I see. You already failed. You going in with that. Why would we go in thinking that our relationship is going to fail? We should change that thought process of going in on how I can make this successful. It's going to be work, and I think a lot of people just don't want to put in the work. It is work. It's a lot of work. So I'll tell anybody, yes, it's work. Like you said, it's a marathon. It's a long process. So
I think it's more so a lifestyle in a way. I tell people all the time, like I was a fitness trainer for a couple of years. And so I tell people all the time who's trying to lose weight or trying to transform their body. I say this thing is not a marathon, but it is a lifestyle. So when I get up in the morning, I do it because this is something that, what did I say, babe? Dedication means doing something that you don't want to do. But I'm not saying that that's marriage. I mean, discipline, right?
Doing something you don't want to do, but you have to do.
You have to do, but still the discipline in marriage comes with a joy at the end of it when you see the how happy it makes y'all both when y'all can come together and meet common ground a lot of times and just connect constantly. Me and Kim do a head check on each other every single day.
Yeah, he does.
I call to make sure that I say, hey, babe, I'm on my way home from work. I do this every single day because things in the world, anything could happen to me. I can be in a car accident on the way to work. I can get robbed, anything like that. And the first thing I say out of my mouth is, how was your day? So I don't know if she had a bad day at home or where she was visiting sewing classes.
He sound like he hated.
I know she had an issue with her shoulder hurting from getting up too late out of the bed.
Right, that rough retirement life.
And get sleep or whatever, So I call her and I check on her and we do a head check. And in return, she said, how was your day at work? So this is something about, as you stated early, about consistent. Oh yeah, and I mentioned that 7 days a week we pray together in the morning before I leave. It doesn't matter. 365, 7 days a week, as long as we breathing, as long as God put breath in our lungs, I'm praying. We both come together and we pray. And we pray for a numerous amount of things, and our prayers are specific. And our prayers are about each other and everybody else who's dealing with pain or whatever the case may be, if it's sickness or if it's homelessness, whatever. Our pastors who are on attack because the enemy wants to break up households, wants to break up marriages, and he's starting with us, Joe. It's starting with the men. So as long as he can break down the head, then everything else will just crumble. So I know that. And if I have those expectations of what the enemy is trying to do, and I know the enemy and I study the enemy's ways, he's been having the same ways since the beginning. So ain't nothing changed about him. But the beautiful thing about God is ain't nothing changed about God. So he keeps continuously defeating him. And as long as we stay with him, he will always and will defeat sin, period.
Very well said. Very well said, man. This has really been awesome. Just having this conversation. Marriage is so, like I said, it's so involved, so many layers to it. And I think, and I want to thank, Kim, just for my listeners, Kim was my inspiration for even doing this series. We of course have other couples that are going to be a part of this special series that we're doing, but I appreciate you, Kim, for even having it on your heart to want to speak to these things, because we need these type of conversations. We we need this dialogue, being authentic, being raw, keeping it real, holding back no punches with it, but just just laying it out there. Yeah, as challenging and as difficult as marriages can be, there's a lot of fulfillment. There's a lot of beauty in it. There's a lot of special things that come up out of it. But again, it is a marathon. There are going to be challenges that come. There are going to be storms that come. But with God at the head, there's nothing that's too insurmountable for us to overcome. We need to be more committed to our marriages and making them work.
Yes.
And it's more than just making sure that you're not, messing around. It's a full scope. It's not, it's not just one particular thing. It's all aspects. It's the mental, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, the financial, the overall wellness of the marriage, both collectively and individually, just looking out for one another, having one another's back. Making it, clear to not only each other, but to the world that, hey, we are an unbreakable force. To the enemy, I know you're out there. I know you're looking to attack, and I know you're looking to, as Vince stated, I know you're looking to come at the head of that marriage as the vulnerable point. But guess what? We're not going to let you have your way. We're going to fight. We're going to fight through this thing. We're going to stand firm, on God and His Word and what He's imparted in us. That's why, again, for my listeners, if God is not in your marriage, it's not too late. You got to have Him. You got to include Him. It can't be not at all, or when it's convenient for you to include Him. It has to be, again, our key word is through our conversation today has been the consistency. It has to be consistent.
True.
And when I found myself in my own marriage where we've allowed ourselves to lean on God collectively, and even in my role as husband, that's never failed me.
Yeah.
The times when I strayed from that and I didn't seek God's counsel, I tried to wing it and do it on my own way and my own terms. That's when I get my foot in my mouth. That's when I stumble. That's when I get tripped up. That's when I expose myself, when I make myself vulnerable for the enemy to attack me in whatever way in that moment in time that he wants to attack me, where he wants to attack me in my mouth. So I say something to my wife that I shouldn't be saying. He attacks me in my head where I'm thinking thoughts that I shouldn't be thinking. I'm behaving in ways that I shouldn't be behaving. Things that when I reflect on it afterwards, I'm ashamed. I'm embarrassed. I'm like, better. I'm beating myself up about it. And even then, the enemy is enjoying that because he doesn't want you to offer forgiveness of yourself for falling short. So keep beating yourself up. Keep on, feeling bad about it instead of releasing that thing to God and saying, Lord, I messed up. I fell short. I ask for your forgiveness. I ask for your restoration in this moment. Get me back on track. Get me on the right path. And guess what? We have a God that is full of forgiveness, full of love for us, and He will do just that. You ain't got to beg Him or nothing. Like it's squashed. You still talking about it, Joe, and I already forgave you weeks ago. Why you keep bringing it up? Let's move forward. Let's learn from this. And so you can be that better man. You can be that better husband. So you can be that better wife. You can be that. That's the approach that we have to have in it all. So,
yes.
With that said, before I let you go, again, as is customary here, because we've kind of tapped into our last question about kind of those keys to a successful marriage. You already had kind of tapped into that, but I do want to take an opportunity again to celebrate you, the two of you, as a couple, as a marriage. If you got any exciting news, anything coming up, either whether it's something going on right now or coming down the pipe that you as a married couple got to share with us, please share that with us. We want to celebrate you. We want to show you some love. So anything exciting coming up for Team Davis that we need to know about?
Yes, it's a very exciting event coming up. My 50th birthday. Okay.
I heard about that.
So it's going to be 80s theme. Okay. So I remember a lot about the 80s. I had some bad times in the 80s, but I also had some good times. And I remember those good times so much because of the bad times, because I gravitated to them because they were my outlet. You know what I mean? So we're talking about from music to TV shows to celebrities, you name it, cars. everything. Those things, I'm excited about having this party that we're having, celebrating my 50th birthday. And most importantly, I thank God for even getting me to this point, because there are some points in my life I didn't think that I was even going to make it. You know, violent things that happened in my life, things in the neighborhood, you know what I mean? So those things that I just appreciate up until this point, that what God has sent me through. Somebody had been praying for me, all along, and I I just appreciate life more now than I ever have before. I think differently, I act differently. But there's one thing about 50 that I realize is that my tolerance for people in traffic, man. I don't know if it was something. I just be want to get home and dealing with crazy people in traffic, and I'm scared to go to the gas station now at night. Things change, you know what I mean? And so, and this ride has been amazing, and it still is with my wife. We continuously deposit and invest in each other constantly. And I didn't think in the beginning that we was even going to go this far. You know, I just, like I say, we just winging it. We just take it as one day at a time and make sure we stay consistent, as you say, in our relationship. But that is the major thing that's coming up. My 50th birthday party, and we are getting it together, and it's going to be a costume party. So, 80s
dress.
costume dress.
80s dress.
So wherever how it was in the 80s, we need to see it. If we could get a curl wig, get it.
That's enough. You act like you're promoting it.
He said, "He is promoting. Get your curl on."
Yes, I'm telling you. But that's the major thing that's coming up. The 50th birthday party celebration.
And for me, I'm excited about transforming one of my bedrooms into my sewing room. So he surprised me with a new sewing table, and we done broke down some stuff in the room, and I'm gonna have it painted and the floor put in. So that's one of the plans of coming. So we'll finish after his 50th party, and I am excited to celebrate coming up on our 22nd anniversary.
Yes.
And when is your 22nd anniversary?
November the 9th.
All right. So we got 21 plus years in the running, heading close to 22. So
Yes.
that is definitely something to celebrate. Of course, my man Vince getting ready to turn 50. That's always an exciting milestone. So, and just for the spirit of what we're talking about here today, just to see a marriage that is thriving, two people who clearly love each other unconditionally, working hard at keeping the marriage going, and just enjoying every aspect, just enjoying the ride, the journey. Again, even with the bumps and lumps in between, you're doing it. It's something about, even when you're going through your struggles, when you're doing it with somebody that's your ride or die, whether you're sitting in front of a feast or whether you're sharing splitting a hot dog with each other. It's just when the two of you are doing it together, when you, and you're on the same focus, the same direction, the same path. It's just a wonderful experience to be a part of. And so for anybody that's tuning in, like I said, these are the type of marriages that you want to experience, that you want your marriage to be in. And if you're not married and you're thinking about doing it, whether it's for the first time or maybe a second go around, again, it can happen for you again. I mean, Kim is a perfect example. I've been married more than once as well. I'm in my second marriage. So it's not impossible for you to have that rebound, and don't beat yourself up about things didn't work out the first time around. We make our mistakes. We didn't, process things the right way the first go around. It's okay. You seek God's advice, you seek his counsel. He'll reveal to you whether or not the person that you're thinking about going down that path with is the right one to do it with. He'll make it clear. He'll make it plain. You won't have to, go through a whole, complicated web of figuring it all out. He'll make it simple and plain for you. You'll know. You know what you know when you know it, and he'll be with you throughout that entire ride as long as you include him. He's not going to force his way into that marriage, but
No.
if you leave that door open and say, God, be a part of this, he'll lock on to it and trust. There's just when you think he's accomplished something great in that marriage, he'll hit you with another surprise and another surprise and another surprise, and you'll just start to rack up the testimonies, and you'll have opportunities, whether it be in this format or just in your daily walk, that people are paying attention to you. People are observing what you're doing and how you're making it. You're being of encouragement and inspiration to other people who aspire to be like you, to have that successful and blessed marriage. That's what you want. God didn't intend for us to be alone. But we do have to be mindful about who we connect with, because everybody's not the one that we're supposed to connect with. So, and we can't allow, well, I don't want to be by myself. I don't want to, I don't want this. I don't want people to think that it's got to be the right time, and it's got to be with the right person. So you exercise that patience, you trust in God to lead the way. And I promise you, marriage can be a beautiful and exciting and wonderful experience that is just, can't be compared with anything else. So
one other thing,
yes, go ahead.
I wanted to add to, we're empty nesters.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important. Are you going to date again? How are you going to change your focus? Because in relations, in a marriage, you be focused on your children and things. And sometimes you can just drift slightly apart because these are priorities right now. But now that we're empty nesters, it's important that we spend time together. We have a dinner date every Friday. We have a dinner date every Friday. We meet up. Sometimes he getting off work and he'll just say, meet me over at our spot. And we can have conversation, catch up of the day. It's some things that we might have missed during the week. And it's very important to have that time. And I like hanging with him, and it's just us. And at times, our adult kids will call us, why y'all ain't never at home? Why? We're with each other. We don't have to be at home,
Right.
But I think that's important too. When you become empty nester, refocus, on dating. What you did, how, when y'all were dating, things like that. Movies, events, comedy shows, that's what we do.
Love that. And I'm glad you brought that up because, again, and been guilty of that where, you kind of get into the regimen of life. You get up, you go to work, you pay the bills, you do this, you do that. And you'll find yourself locked into this mode to where, as you stated, the things that you used to do in the early going, the things that got you all excited about being with one another and spending time, you kind of dismiss that. And before you know it, the years are passing by and you've forgotten how to, like you said, you've forgotten how to date. You've forgotten how to court one another. You've forgotten how to just do the simple things. We're not even talking about having to spend, major monies on whether it's dinners or movies or gifts or anything like that. Just the quality, the spirit of the quality time. And because those little things are what ultimately help to as well sustain your marriage and keep it fresh, keep it lively. So you don't run the risk of getting stale. Because again, if we're not actively doing that, that's another pathway to let the enemy creep in. Because if you allow things to get stale in the home and he exposes something else that we ain't supposed to be looking at or paying attention to, and we think, "Ooh, let me try that. That might make me feel good." Yeah, and it may make you feel good, but if it's outside of the line of what your marriage is, it can cause problems for that. It can create conflict, and in some instances, it could destroy it. So, and you just don't want that to happen. So I appreciate you all sharing that. Everything that you shared tonight has just truly been a blessing. I know my listeners are going to be blessed. I know I've been blessed. I've been taking some mental notes of some things that you guys are doing that I need to be applying in my situation, my marriage right away, because it's good stuff. And we can all learn from one another on better ways to strengthen and and build upon our marriages, regardless of how long our marriages. Like I say, you're at 21 years, getting ready to hit on 22. I'm 8 days away from 20 years of my own marriage. So, at the time of this recording, so, it's, and you kind of, and I'm sure you guys think back, like, where did all these years go? Like, it just seemed like just yesterday we just met, and now boom, here we are, and here you are, empty nesters, I got a kid that's driving, all that kind of stuff, it's like, wow, so.
Hey, can you sleep at night when she's driving? Can you sleep?
Well, she ain't got her license yet. She's still in permit mode, but just the idea of her, just even at that point, now Vince can relate to this. I haven't got to the boys yet, so I ain't ready for that. So the longer that takes, I'm good with that. I'm in no rush. So if driving is the most complicated thing I got to worry about between driving and refereeing, I'm sure you can probably appreciate that. Refereeing between mother and daughter, when they get to that age, you got to be the referee. Like, okay,
you can tell you about that, Joe. You can call me about that.
you be sitting around just watching TV, doing something. All of a sudden, you hear, what is that? Nothing. All of a sudden, what is that? Why is my child screaming? Because you talk too much. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's just all of those things. These are just, again, part of the experiences that we go through in our marriages and such. So, again, thank you both so much for being a part of this, and to my listeners, absolutely. And my listeners, if you've enjoyed our broadcast tonight, if you enjoyed this conversation about the marathon of marriage, the content, the sharing of the stories, the transparency, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is all about. We want to be of encouragement. When we want to uplift, we want to pour into the lives of others, with the hopes of, in this particular special series, strengthen our marriages, make sure our marriages are long lasting, that they are sustaining the test of time, even in the midst of the challenges and the storms and the attacks that are out there looking to destroy our marriages. We want to be we want to give a new perspective, a different perspective, a better way of doing it, so that we don't have to encounter and go through, these pitfalls and being so quick to just give up on our marriages. It's just, there's just too much that the marriage is meant to be, the importance, the significance, the value of it. Too many people that can be impacted when these marriages don't survive. We want them to be long lasting. This was God created. He made this thing special for us to enjoy, to benefit from. It's probably, of all the things that He's given us to enjoy, this is definitely up at the top of the list of one of the most beautiful things that He's ever created. And so, if you had the pleasure, the privilege of to be a part of that, you want to make the most of it. You want to create all the memories that you can, and again, be that living example for others who will follow behind you and will be looking for the wisdom, for the direction, for the guidance, for the vision of what it should look like, in order for it to be successful. So with that said, remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, keep fighting that good fight. Keep hanging in there. Keep persevering, even through the difficult storms of life, the challenging moments, and know that ultimately that relationship with God is the difference maker. It's the key to you being able to overcome and accomplish anything in life that you were set forth to do, your purpose, and living in that purpose and being the best versions of yourself, both individually and in the case of our show for the night, within the context of your marriage. So until next time, take care of yourselves. I look forward to seeing you next time. Continue to follow with our series, because we're going to have more exciting couples that are going to come on and share their stories as well. So you take care of yourselves and have a great rest of your evening.